Good morning, good evening, or whatever time you could be tuned in and listening to this. I want to take a few of your moments to speak about men and mental health. We are in that season in which we are reflecting on men and mental health across the globe. And a few thoughts came to mind when I was thinking about this, and especially where we are as a society in regard to the well-being of men and their mental health. Oftentimes, and especially within our diverse settings, you'll hear statements like man up, tough it up, you are a man, you shouldn't cry, and all this. And then in the mix, and especially in the field that I'm in of counseling and offering therapeutic interventions, you'll hear statements like it is okay not to be okay when it comes to mental health. You'll hear men being told it's okay to open up and talk. But unfortunately, these are turning quickly into cliches because they are not followed with actions. And wherever they are followed with actions, you find that man or the men in our society are still being stigmatized when they want to come out and open up. And therefore, we find a sort of dichotomy, a sort of hypocrisy when it comes into the issue of addressing men and mental health. For instance, as I speak, I am speaking in the wider American space, in which you find that often children, women, and pets take the first priority, and sometimes man is a distant fourth or fifth. And you find because of this social subtle emasculation of the man has tended to get into their cocoons, have tended to be very lonely, have tended not to speak out. And oftentimes what happens is that these emasculated men end up feeling as if though his identity, his role as a man, his role as a provider, as a father, his role as the person who should be in charge is slowly getting messed up with. And when a man loses his identity, this oftentimes is followed by issues of mental health concerns. Listen, for instance, on the messages that will come and have come on Father's Day. You'll hear a mother somewhere, a lady somewhere, wishing Happy Father's Day to all caring dads, and then a rider is put down there and said this message is not for the deadbeat dads, it's not for the absent father, it's not for the community husband. A subtle way of still hitting out at the man. I am not here to defend any man, but I'm here so that we can have a discussion on mental well-being and to ask ourselves, how can we stop making the man feel weaker or less effective. The issue of society expectations and the stigma surrounding men and the mental health of men is something that we need to ask ourselves, how do we address? The health of men overall, in a holistic sense, is very significant. More so, the mental health area. And we find that men are faced with a very interesting scenario when it comes to seeking help. Mental health is something that affects men and women and children all over the globe. But men experience these issues differently because of a constellation of issues. And you'll find oftentimes the man is less likely to seek help or any form of treatment, even the opening up that sometimes we encourage in these spaces. And therefore what happens is that the world continues to record higher rates of suicide for men. The world continues to record increased breakup of families instigated by men. The world continues to note careless and daredevil behaviors emanating from men, sometimes in our highways. Because you'll find that the only space a man feels a form of freedom is when he's in his well-roaded and serviced car out there on the highway doing speed and feeling safe in that enclosed space. Some of the concerns for men and mental health includes but may not be limited to some of the following. The issue of seeking help. And we note that there are many barriers to do with traditional gender roles, and especially for us in Africa, in which a man is expected to be the masculine person, the security guy, the provider, strong, in charge. And therefore, acknowledging their struggles and seeking help in this kind of background becomes difficult for the man. Oftentimes in my therapy practices, men will share and say that they feel ashamed to seek help when they are expected to be strong. As we move on in this area, we also note that men will manifest their health issues in different ways than women. A man who feels caged because of the subtle moves to emasculate him, because of the subtle ways of approaching issues even at the legal arena, oftentimes will show a lot of irritability, anger, substance abuse, and for those who are in relationships, even the instance of domestic violence. And it is sad to note that even the way we set our laws is sometimes tilted against men. A lady who makes a suggestive sexual joke, sometimes you'll get away with it. If a man dare do the same, he could find himself in prison, charged with an inappropriate sexual behavior. And you note that in many of our prisons, men outnumber women by a higher majority. And of course, when they are there, the issues of anger increases, and sometimes they develop the victim mentality that the world is against us. Some of the mental health conditions that will be seen among men include depression. And as we have seen in the past, for those who are in the mental health arena, depression oftentimes revolves around the feeling of worth, the feeling of, am I appreciated? You know, the moment somebody feels I am worthless, I am helpless, I am hopeless, those three keywords, anytime we encounter them, we are quickly looking at the instance of depression emerging. Other concerns for mental health may include anxiety, and especially the anxiety of how am I going to behave in a certain scenario in which probably my co-workers, the majority are women, and any comment, any form of presentation could be construed as sexually suggestive, and the man may find himself in trouble. Where I'm coming from in Kenya, you'll find sometimes a young girl of 17 years making sexual advances to their classmates in secondary schools who are 15 years. And when they are presented before a judge, the young boy is quickly taken to prison, while the lady who started it off is set free. And we keep on asking, what other interventions should have come in? Because the girl child requires all protection, the boy child equally needs protection. Toxic masculinity, something that is so prevalent within the Black African community and also in Africa, is also another issue in which there is a tendency to stick to masculinity. And when this is affected in one way or the other, behaviors like substance abuse come in, aggression, emotional suppression, and all have an impact on mental health. For men, we also note the increasing risk of suicide. And for us, we ask ourselves, what do we need to do? Some of the interventions, and when we speak interventions, I would want to underline the word early intervention as much as possible. Everybody out there in the society becoming wise, empowered, keen to recognize as early as possible signs of mental health issues and seeking help wherever possible, or helping their kin, whether they are men or women, to seek help as early as possible. As I speak about this, I am concerned about our awareness of how we can support the menfolk in our society. And all of us in society need to start, first and foremost, by getting healed from any form of trauma that could be pushing us to treat those others in the ways we treat them negatively, leading to instances of ill mental health. And we may need to start, and especially in the arena of men, by challenging stigma. Allow the men to have a safe space to discuss their feelings, to discuss their experiences, to literally throw their hands in the air and say this is too much, because it can be too much at times. In a society like I am in here in America, having to do 2 or 3 jobs in a day, clocking between 16 and 18 hours, loneliness, felt and live, a restriction because of this kind of economic kind of pursuits, a restriction into community life, lack of that space to irate emotions, and this includes oftentimes for everybody else. There is a deadness in the air when it comes to human experiences. For the men, are there ways we can promote healthy masculinity? And these are questions and discussions and thoughts we need to engage in, because not all masculinity is negative, and especially helping men to prioritize emotional well-being and open communication. Asking everybody to give a priority to their physical health, to give priority to their mental health, making sure that everybody and every other place that we are in, the churches, the faith spaces, our working spaces, our homes, have those resources to help people get empowered in the area of mental health, even as we pursue overall physical health. Encourage men to build social connections. Connections in which they meet just to have a good time, to laugh, and not the unhealthy competition that will spice up men's conversation. Because sometimes men will meet to compare the kind of a car someone is driving, to compare and to talk about the bank balances sometimes, to compare who has the largest collection of women out there. Can we encourage positive social connections with meaningful relationships? In my arena too, we talk of mindfulness and meditation. time for the men to manage their stress, to be helped to improve their emotional regulation, and also to experience overall well-being. And this includes connection with their Maker. For me, coming from the Christian church, I would not hesitate to talk about God. For those others coming from different other faiths, who is your higher power? How do you get connected? How do you get, spiritual nourishment? We ask ourselves about this man we are talking about. Before we judge, before we stigmatize, think about that son of yours. Think about that husband. Think about your father. Think about your brother, the significant others, the nephew, the uncle. Because oftentimes we label and put them in one basket. And for our feel good, we talk about these men. But these men come from a family. These men belong to a certain setup. And therefore, as we address mental health, let's put names to these men. Let's be conscious that their well-being equals the well-being of the larger society. As we oftentimes get into the subtle war of the sexes, we ask ourselves, what am I getting my son into? What am I getting my nephew into? What am I getting my husband into? What am I getting my brother into? We foresee and we pray and we hope that society will be better off when we collectively look for interventions that address our felt needs and therefore expand the world of awareness in the issue of mental health. For truly speaking, there is no health without mental health. What do we need to do to address the gaps in the legal spaces? What do we need to do to address the gaps in the faith-based spaces? What do we need to do to address the gaps in the family relationship spaces? Men need support as everybody else needs support. And when we heighten this, when we have concerted approach into men and their well-being at the mental space, we will be aiming at reducing the numbers in prison. We will be aiming to reducing the numbers of the homeless in our streets, because sometimes, and I heard this from a person I engaged in one of the streets here in America. And he said, look here, buddy, I feel safe in the street because by declaring myself as somebody without an income, I am of the space of child support. I am of the space of daily noises. I am of the space of being seen as a jack. and the street is better off. And this broke my heart, because even from afar, you could see that in that man, a gentleman who could come out existed. Are we driving our fathers away, our sons away, our uncles away, our grandpas away, in the name of we must win this, and men must know who called the shots? It's not about who called the shots. It's about a world better in the space of a well-articulated mental health program.